say thank you to Provost Youngman, Director of Student Activities Dr. Ulmer, and College Republicans President Henry Hayden and College Democrats President Brady Madden for their contributions to the event. Now we'll begin the ceremony with a prayer. Dear God, on this day, we remember the lives lost across our nation during the attacks on September 11th, 2001. We share in the heartache of those impacted. We share in the sorrow for the loss of the innocent and silenced voices of the victims. To those who lost friends, family, and loved ones, we feel your pain. We mourn with you. We pray with you. May God's comfort, healing touch allow us to renew our faith in peace, love, and freedom. We thank you, God, for the selfless actions performed by first responders that day. May their courage and sacrifices never be forgotten. Today we turn to you in search of hope and refuge. We entrust the United States of America to your loving care. Please grant us the strength and wisdom needed to seek unity, reconcile conflicts, and celebrate our differences. We ask that you make our nation whole again, so that we may live together in harmony as one family in one home. Please bless this beautiful land that we love and guide our country towards a better tomorrow. Amen.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming out to this event. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Cameron Spivey, and I'm the campus director for the Generals Redoubt. I appreciate everyone coming out for this event. We first started doing it when I was a sophomore, now 4 years ago, and I think it's improved every year. We've tried to involve as many people as possible, and we hope to see it continue for years to come. We appreciate you all coming out. Today marks the 23rd anniversary of that unforgettable day on September 11th, 2001. The tragedy itself is not something to celebrate, but nevertheless, I am thankful that we could all come together to remember it. Looking around, you may see several signs that say, "Never forget." But perhaps a better phrase is not to never forget, but to always remember. So I ask, how can we always remember September 11th, 2001? I, for one, have no direct memory of the event, as I suspect it's the same with many of you. I was born in 2002, and I've been raised with many shared experiences from my parents, friends, teachers, professors. Perhaps you were eating breakfast when the first plane crashed, or on your way to work. Perhaps a colleague told you about it, or maybe you didn't hear for several hours. Every year when I organize this event, I hear people's own accounts from that dark day. And I always respond that I wasn't alive. But through the stories that people share, I gather bits of what that experience was like. And still, 23 years later, when people recount these stories to me, they're just as powerful as I imagine they were 20 years ago. The shock they felt, or the horror they underwent watching a second plane crash into the tower. Though I was not there and can never fully comprehend what that day was like, I can remember the tragedy and keep these memories alive for future generations, like me, who have never had their own story to add. So on that note, I would like to direct you to the 3 memorials behind me, each of which help us to always remember the men, women, and children whose lives were forever changed that day. First, I'm standing before you in front of 2,977 U.S. flags, one for each victim who passed away as a result of the attacks. Mothers, brothers, fathers, and friends. Nearly 400 first responders who sacrificed themselves, saving others. The 40 heroes on United Flight 93 who died outside of Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The tragedy happened on American soil, and we hope that the uniformity of these 2,977 speaks to America's motto, E pluribus unum, out of many, one. Second, on this side, we have international flags, one representing each country that suffered a loss. Not all of the 2,977 victims were citizens of the United States. With the collapse of the World Trade Center, the 9/11 attacks had a global impact, an impact which is still felt today around the world. Third, we have memorials for two Washington Lee alumni, Robert Allen Schlegel, class of '85, and James Andrew Gadiel, class of 2000. I'd like to share just a bit more about them. When Robert graduated magna cum laude in 1985, he chose not to pursue journalism, but to follow the paths of his father and two brothers. He entered into the United States Navy Officers Candidate School in Newport, Rhode Island. Robert received his commission as an ensign in 1986, and for the next 14 years, he served in many significant assignments. He earned his master's degree in international relations. He was awarded a War College diploma for completion of the Joint Professional Educational Program, and he received 10 prestigious military awards, including the Purple Heart. During his time, he married his high school sweetheart, Dr. Don Schlegel, who supported his every assignment and endeavor. Having been posted at the Pentagon for 8 months, he was promoted to the rank of Commander of the United States Navy in August of 2001. Robert was working in a temporary office until his permanent office could be completed, when on September 11th at 9:37 a.m., the Navy Command Center of the Pentagon was attacked. It exploded, killing 126 victims, including Robert. James graduated from Washington and Lee University in 2000 with a degree in economics. He moved to New York City to work as a trader for the bond brokerage firm Cantor Fitzgerald. His office was located on the 103rd floor of the North Tower. It was here in his office where James perished when the first plane crashed into the North Tower. His life was just beginning at the age of 23. By his colleagues and fraternity brothers, James has been described as quiet but engaged, friendly, agreeable, and one who could set aside differences. On a memorial erected to him in his hometown of Kent, Connecticut, he is described as a gentleman and a gentle man. As a Washington and Lee alumnus, I'm especially saddened by the death of my fellow generals. I wonder how they might have continued to contribute to the W&L community. Perhaps I would have ran into them at alumni weekend or crossed paths with them in a job search. The possibilities are endless, and their deaths speak volumes about how tragic it is when anyone in our university community passes. And I wish I could have signs for the other 2,975 people to learn where they grew up, where they went to school, and where they worked. If nothing else, I hope their families and friends continue to always remember them and share stories of them from generation to generation. That is our responsibility here today, and I am grateful to be joined by so many others in that mission. We will now hear from Paul Youngman, the Associate Provost for Operations. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron, and thank you all for inviting. Wow, that song is a lot. Thank you all for inviting me. It's really an honor to be invited to speak on this day that marks the anniversary of a tragedy that forever changed the landscape of this country and the world. I don't know that there's a lot of original words left to spill on this topic because so many have been spoken already, but they bear repeating. That's why we study history. September 11th is permanently etched into the collective memory of those of us who were alive at the time. But this day is not really just a day marked by sorrow and the loss of our alumni, Robert and James, who are exemplary of the thousands of others who lost their lives that day, but also a day of resilience and hope. Hope for this university, as Cameron pointed out, and hope for this country, because as it turns out, and here's a spoiler alert, we can unite when we need to as a country, something that we need to keep in mind as we enter this divisive election season. So illustrative of the sort of illustrative of the green shoots of hope that rose from that day marked by fire and gray ash as it was, I'd like to share a story I heard a couple of weeks ago in a Fall Academy meeting. For those of you who don't know, Fall Academy is a 2-week professional development period we hold annually for faculty and staff right before classes start. I heard this session in a new faculty, or this speech in a new faculty orientation session, and it was told by Professor Kamara. For those who don't know him, Professor Kamara is a professor of French, and he's also the head of the Romance Language Department. To tell you who he is, or give you an idea who he is, a couple years ago I did an audit of all the committees here at Washington and Lee and found that by far and away he was serving on more committees than anybody else at the time. And I think that gives you an idea of what a great citizen he was of Washington, or is of Washington and Lee University, and also about how deeply he cares about this place. And Professor Kamara is one of the kindest, gentlest human beings that you'll meet on this campus. Can I get some head nods from people who know Professor Kamara? In September 2001, Professor Kamara had been in this country for around 8 years. And September 12, 2001 was to be one of his first days in the classroom at Washington and Lee. Would everybody here agree that that was probably a stressful day to enter the classroom for the first time in any setting, right? Well, let me add 2 more salient facts. What I failed to mention is that Professor Kamara is of the Islamic faith. I also left out the fact that Professor Kamara's first name is one of the most common names in the world. It's Mohammed. Sadly, that lovely name, which means praiseworthy or commendable, took on a very different meaning on that day. Now, with those additional facts, right, the phrase difficult day is an understatement, right? It takes on an entirely different meaning. But I'll tell you the story I heard. Professor Kamara would not characterize September 12, 2001 as a difficult day. And don't get me wrong, it's not that he wasn't sad and not that he wasn't nervous as all get out for all the reasons that I just mentioned. It's that he talks of the kindness and the grace with which his students treated him that day, not to mention faculty and staff. It was a day for him that brought a ray of hope in an otherwise gloomy time, and it was a day where he learned the positive power of this community, this wonderful, amazing, deeply political purple community, not blue and red, but purple, characterized as it is by compassion, kindness, and its downright welcoming atmosphere. He was hooked that day, and clearly we were as well, because he's still here to this day, 23 years later. So as we stand here today to take this moment to remember the roughly 3,000 lives lost, to remember the fathers and the mothers and the sons and the daughters and the friends and the colleagues, and remember that each of those individuals had dreams and inspirations and a story, and their absence is a reminder, of course, of the fragility of life and the unpredictability of our existence, but not the end of these people's narratives, right? Their narratives continue in our memory. Consider this from the novel Their Eyes Were Watching God, a beautiful novel that we read this year by Zora Neale Hurston. We read it for the first year common read that we do at Washington and Lee. The main character, Janie, recently lost her husband, and she proclaims, quote, "Of course he wasn't dead. He could never be dead until she herself had finished feeling and thinking. The kiss of his memory made pictures of love and light against the wall. Here was peace," end quote. That's what we're here to do today, right? We're here to actually not finish feeling and thinking, right? We are here to make pictures of love and light, and we are finally here to find peace. And in our remembrance, we also find strength and hope in stories like Professor Mohammed Kamara's. We come together, a unity, and you name the values, a community united by peace, compassion, and understanding. That's what this place is about. And as I said, a lot of the words that I already have spoken, so here comes some cliche, but trite as it may sound, you college students are the future of this society. And you embody the hope that lives in the very DNA of this country. And the challenges that we face now in this political season are different from those from the immediate post 9/11 era, but the underlying principles remain the same. Here comes another list, right? The importance of community, the importance of understanding, and the importance of solidarity. So let's carry forward the lessons learned on that horrific day, embracing the great political diversity of this marvelous university and this grand country, because again, it is in our purpleness, not in our blueness and our redness, where we find the ability to speak to one another. And in a world that is often divided, choose empathy over indifference, choose speaking over conflict, and choose understanding over fear. To that end, I encourage you as we come to the end of this ceremony to share your thoughts with one another as you take a look at what the folks have set up behind me, and honor the memories of those by spreading some kindness. Get involved with initiatives on this campus that promote understanding across divides, especially if they can be political divides in this season, because small acts of kindness can create ripples of change that flow to unity. And let's not let the promise of that unity, which is fundamentally the promise of our shared humanity, be overshadowed. Let's choose not to be defined once again by fear, but rather by our capacity to lift one another up. So as we leave this gathering today in the spirit of remembrance, but also of resilience, let us ensure we honor those who pass through our actions and commitments to making ours a better university community, and by extension, this a stronger republic. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks again for being here. My name is Brady Madden. I'm a junior, and I have the honor of serving as the president of College Democrats. Like many of you here, I wasn't born when the devastating attacks happened on September 11th, 2001. It is impossible for me to fully grasp the pain and heartbreak felt on that day, but one thing is clear to all of us who grew up in a post-9/11 world. There remains a void, not only in the New York City skyline, but also in the homes of the victims and the hearts of everyone they touched. And that's why we're gathered here today. Even though, like I said, many of us weren't alive then. It's our responsibility to learn from those who were, so we can honor, remember, and memorialize the 2,977 innocent lives lost in New York City, at the Pentagon, and in rural Pennsylvania. We also must honor the immense bravery of the countless men and women who risked their lives, not only in the wreckage, but aboard the United Airlines Flight 93. As we stand here today, let us remember not only the tragedy of 9/11, but the resilience, compassion, and strength that emerged in its aftermath. The events of that day forever shaped our world, but they also taught us the power of coming together as a community, as a country, and as human beings. Let us continue to honor the memory of those lost by striving to live with kindness, empathy, and a commitment to making our world a better place. In doing so, we ensure their legacy endures, and that we will never forget the lessons of that fateful day. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Henry Hayden, the president of College Republicans of Washington, D.C. Today, September 11th, is a very important day of remembrance for Americans. First, it is a time to remember the nearly 40,000 lives needlessly lost in that day. Parents, husbands, wives, sons, daughters, friends. From Washington and Lee alumni Rob Schlegel, James Gadiel. I remember my parents telling me about the world around them shutting down, flights canceled, businesses shuttered for that brief. It was a time when Americans tuned out the trivial pursuits of the day, focused on what at the time mattered most, protecting loved ones from the evils of tyranny and terrorism. But Americans quickly realized they individually could not stop this threat. They needed each other. They needed to come together and fight. When Americans responded to the call to fight, they joined the ranks of America's armed forces, trusting that their institutions would support them in this fight. And so the war on terrorism began, successfully eliminating terrorists across the world. It was a fight that would see the ruthless Osama bin Laden finally brought to justice and Al-Qaeda crushed. While America took out targets, spreading freedom itself was challenging. Foreign lands, lacking America's strong institutions, generated friction in freedom's advance. Not all goals were achieved, but the American spirit never wavered. We can take freedom for granted each day. Living a life with freedom is easy. Attaining a life of freedom is not. When freedom is in danger, Americans will respond to it. While at times, perhaps even now, we may feel that we lack the resolve for such a fight, we mustn't forget that America has previously had to overcome our society's divisions of the day to defeat our greatest foes. While there is glory to be had in conflict, we shouldn't need war to find the beauty seemingly absent in America. I don't have the answer to America's divisions. While it is not least a vital lesson to be learned from this tragic day in American history, let us not forget the great sacrifices made to defend our freedom and the eternal, worthy struggle to promote the merits of a free society as well. But to do either of these things, we must reclaim that unified American spirit that brought us out of the stage 23 years ago. It is why in the saving of these flags,